If you like being able to watch the podcast, make sure to let me know by subscribing to this channel.
Well, I have an update. And if you're watching this on YouTube, then I probably look different than I usually look when I record episodes. I wasn't planning on recording today, and usually I put myself together a little bit better when I am going to be recording for all of you. But my best friend, I just got off the phone with her, and she encouraged me to record this episode anyway, right here in the moment, despite how I look. And I decided to go ahead and do it. Now, I know that many of you have not listened to the episode that I put out on altruism and living liver donation. And this is a follow-up episode to that one. Those of you who have listened to it, then you know that I have been in the process of finding out if I can be a living liver donor for my stepbrother.
Everything is working out for me. It's working out for you, too. It just takes believing that it is. We can have, be, and do anything. The key is to care about how you feel and choose to feel good right now.
The process has taken weeks from the time that I called him or got in contact with him. It was kind of a drawn out way that we were able to connect because we hadn't been connected in such a long time, in over 20 years. But from the moment that we got connected again to now has been several weeks. And I went through some extensive testing in order to find out if I was a candidate for living liver donation. In addition, my stepbrother also had to go through some intensive tests in order to find out if he was a candidate for receiving living liver donation. So I just got the call, and I kind of knew the call was coming. Yesterday, my donor advocate called me, and she informed me that they were going to be discussing my case yesterday, and that I should hear back yesterday afternoon or today in the morning based on the results of their discussion. And basically what they were doing is they were meeting together as a team. There's several of them, around 8 or 9 individuals that participate in the donation process per person. So like my team has around 8 people, and my stepbrother's team also has around 8 people. All these people that are involved in trying to coordinate transplant. And they all got together. They all got together to discuss my results and to discuss the results from my stepbrother's testing, and then discussing if we were a match. Now, I had a little bit of information before today because I had had some telehealth appointments, and they were able to tell me that I was healthy. So as my test results came in, they started to look at them, and they could see that I had nothing that would be a problem or anything that they were concerned with. So that was good. The only thing was my blood tests came back with a little bit of a low iron. It wasn't like super low, but enough to where they suggested that I start taking an iron supplement just for my own health. And I definitely would have had to take that if I'm going through with the transplant. So I kind of knew that things were lining up and everything was going as we had hoped it would go. I knew that my stepbrother was going through the tests, and I was kind of waiting to hear back about his results, but his were after mine, so it was taking longer. And I'm basically waiting to hear from the surgeon. because usually the donor meets with the surgeon as part of the meetings. I went through several meetings in a day, meeting with all the different people on the transplant team, and usually the surgeon is one of them. But the surgeon wasn't able to make it to that meeting, and so I met with the surgical nurse, and she wasn't able to answer all my questions. But even though it was the day after I had had all my physical testing done, my CT scan was already in, and she was able to pull that up for me. And she did share with me, she said, well, I can tell you that your liver's not very big. I don't know if it's too small, but it's definitely on the smaller side. And that the surgeon would have to look at it and determine if the anatomy, my liver anatomy, would actually allow for donation, meaning that they could cut enough of the right lobe off and leave me with 35% of the entire liver, because that's what is required in order for it to regenerate and grow back. So all this time, that's basically what I'm waiting to find out. Is my liver big enough? Are the vessels in my liver compatible with his? The anatomy of the liver itself, will it match up with my stepbrother? And the call came in and I didn't hear the phone, and she left me a message and I listened to it, and lo and behold, my liver is too small. So I have not been granted permission to be a living liver donor. And this was, well, it was a mix of emotions for me to receive that information. And I'm still kind of processing all of it. And I'm still kind of teeter-tottering between negative and positive emotions, because I'm really disappointed that I couldn't do this. I wouldn't have entered into this process if I didn't want to do this for him. This was my idea. I went to him. When I found out that he was in need of a liver, I took it upon myself to reach out. I knew that my blood type would be compatible. I felt like this was something that I was meant to do in my life, that was on my life path. And I followed that inspiration. And it was a strong feeling, and I really felt good about it. And then as the process went on and I started learning some things about liver donation, I started to have a little bit of doubt creep in, and I started to have some worry. And two of those things were that, one, I didn't know that I had to lose my gallbladder. That was something specific in this scenario, because the right part of your liver is what's connected with your gallbladder. So there's two lobes of the liver, and the right lobe has the gallbladder attached. So in order to donate to another adult, that is the lobe that they choose to take, especially when it's a woman donating to a man, because anatomy-wise, women have a tendency to be smaller and therefore have a smaller liver, and men are bigger and need more from the donation, need more, a larger portion of the donor liver in order for their body to take it and regenerate it. So I was faced with the news that I would be losing my gallbladder. And originally, when I was considering reaching out, when I was considering offering myself up as a donor, I thought, well, this is the ideal organ to offer as donation because it's incredible. It literally regenerates back to a normal size and function. You're really not losing anything except for going through the process. Obviously, it's a major surgery and you have to go through that and the recovery and everything that comes along with that as far as your life and the changes that have to be made. So yes, I mean, you have some loss there with time and ability and sometimes money and a lot of those other things that come into play when you're recovering from a surgery. But ultimately, I felt like okay, I know I have a blood type that will be compatible with him, and my liver is going to regenerate. I'm not losing anything. I'm just helping. I can offer the gift of a life, not even a lifetime. I was going to say I could offer the gift of a lifetime, but I'm offering a gift of life, extending his life. And I'm not losing anything. My liver's going to come back. So I learned that I would be losing my gallbladder. There was no other way around it. You can take either lobe of the liver and offer that to somebody in donation. Like either lobe can regenerate and stay within the donor's body and regenerate as well. So it's not about that, but it's about the size. And the right lobe of the liver is larger. And the left side of the liver is usually used when donating to a child, where they're just taking a little sliver of it. And they can do that from the left side, and your gallbladder remains intact. So I took that news and I thought, okay, I need to do some more research now. I need to understand this more. I'm going to be losing a part of my body that I now have, and I need to understand what that's going to look like and how my life is going to change if I don't have that anymore. As it turns out, my best friend does not have a gallbladder. So I was able to call her immediately after receiving this news from my advocate. And I told her, I said, hey, I just learned this. I'm going to be losing my gallbladder in this surgery. And I know you're living without a gallbladder, so what could I expect from that? And I don't remember her exact words, but it was something along the lines of, well, fried foods are not going to be so fun anymore. And I was like, okay, what do you mean? And she said, well, the gallbladder, what it does is it helps you to process fatty foods. So even something like an avocado, right, which is high in fat, even though it's good fat, your gallbladder helps your body to process that. And people that don't have a gallbladder, their body reacts in various ways when fat enters into their body, a lot of which can be uncomfortable or undesirable, but nothing that you can't adapt to. And that's what my best friend said. She was like, I've had to change a few things, but I just adapt to it. And when I do eat foods that are high in fat, I kind of deal with it afterwards. And I don't want to get into too much detail as to what that looks like, but it's just some gastrointestinal issues that you end up having, and you have to deal with it because your gallbladder is not there. Okay, so there's that consideration. And I've been thinking about that and pondering what that would be like. But that alone did not make me jump to a no. I'm not going to be a donor anymore. I just took it in and started considering what I would have to change and how my life would be different. The other thing was that, as you know, or many of you know, I've had a previous surgery. I've had an abdominoplasty. And the reason I had an abdominoplasty was to fix something that's called diastasis recti. And a lot of women get this. Actually, men get this too. It can happen from gaining a bunch of weight, but usually women get this when they become pregnant because your ab muscles separate in order to make room for the growing baby. And with my first pregnancy, my abs went back into the shape that they were before. I recovered nicely. Everything was fine. But in my second pregnancy, because my baby was, over 11 pounds, he was big, he stretched it out so far that after he was born, and even with physical therapy and exercises and diet changes, I wasn't able to fix the diastasis recti. So I opted to have the abdominoplasty to bring my abs back together. And then the surgeon used sutures. They're permanent sutures that are in my abdomen right now. That's kind of like an inner corset that holds the ab muscles together so that they will not separate again. And I knew I wasn't going to have any more pregnancies, so obviously you would not want to go through that and then be pregnant again, because you would be busting open your inner sutures. So because I know I have this in there, I started thinking, well, how is this liver donation surgery going to affect my anatomy in that way? Can we even do it? And in my meetings, I'm bringing this up with the transplant team. And I discovered that at the UW, at the University of Washington in Seattle, they had never had a donor who had also had an abdominoplasty. So this was uncharted waters. And since I couldn't meet with the surgeon, I was talking with the surgical nurse and I said, well, I just want to know, after you cut, are you going to be able to put the sutures back so that I don't have the diastasis return? And first of all, I had to find out where the sutures are. I know that they're in there, but I didn't know like how far down they go and how high up they go. So I had to call my plastic surgeon and I had to ask that question. And they told me that the sutures go up as high as my ribs. So that confirmed for me that in the liver donation process, they would definitely be cutting through those sutures because you're cut from your sternum to your belly button in the liver donation surgery. So now I'm just waiting. I had told the surgical nurse that I wanted to know that. Like, would they bring in a plastic surgeon to fix that for me before they close me up? Is it something they wouldn't be willing to do? Can we even do this? Can you even go in there and get the liver when I have this other surgery that has been performed? And I've been waiting to hear about that. And I still don't know the answer because we found out that my liver is too small for donation, that they never had to address that with me. But I had to think about that. That was definitely something I had to consider, that I had learned about going through the testing process and the meetings, that was a possibility for me, is that my surgery would be undone and they would not be able to repair it. The surgeon did pass on information saying, well, I can't guarantee that your abdomen will look the way it did before the surgery. And I was like, oh, well, I'm not concerned about that. It wasn't about the way it looks for me. I kind of accepted that, I'm going to have this large scar, right? From my sternum to my belly button forever. You have a surgical scar. So I knew that was going to be there. I just wanted to know, can you fix the problem that the abdominoplasty fixed? Because I didn't want to go backwards in that. The reason that I wanted the diastasis recti to be repaired was because it was making my life hard. I would bend over the sink to brush my teeth and my back would hurt because I didn't have the ab muscles in the front where they're supposed to be in order to support me. So those were the two considerations that were making me go, okay, what's this going to be like for me? And that's where I am feeling a little bit of relief, just knowing that I don't have to face that decision on whether or not I can repair what has already been repaired. It's not even a question now because I have not been accepted as a donor candidate. But mostly, I feel bad. And as soon as I received the message informing me, I called my stepbrother immediately, and he didn't answer. And then I thought, well, I got to call my stepmom too. And I have to let her know. She has been checking in with me like every couple days, even if it's just to say, I'm thinking about you. I love you. It tells me that it meant a lot to her that I was in this process for her son. So my stepbrother calls me. He calls me back, and I had to deliver this information because the way liver donation or any kind of organ donation works is when you step forward as being a donor and you get your own team, your information is protected. And they would not call the recipient, whereas sometimes you don't even know who the recipient is. Some people step forward just wanting to be a donor. But in my case, we knew who I was doing this for. But they don't inform the recipient when something comes up, letting the donor know that they're not a candidate. So he would have never known unless it came from me. And delivering that kind of news is not my favorite thing to do. It's a little heavy. It's negative. It's undesirable. It's disappointing. We're disappointed. He had been hoping that I would be a match. He went through all the testing, was told that he was a candidate for living liver donation, which is great. And I had been telling him all of my process, the tests, and that everything was coming back normal, that we were just waiting for the final evaluation. So it was seeming to us both like this was going to match up and we were going to be able to do this. And we were going to be scheduling a surgery and going through with it. So now I had to call and tell him that my liver's too small and I'm not a candidate. I can't help in that way. It's no fun to give somebody information like that. So he's processing it, right? And I'm like, I understand you're kind of taking this all in. I'm here if you want to talk more about it, in the next couple days or whatnot. I said, I'm really hoping that some other people are going to come forward because they have been sharing this link that I'm going to put in the show notes that tells about him. And if you're willing and open to being a donor, you can go through the testing as well, which, by the way, all of the testing is free to you. So if this is something that you're considering, and I urge you to consider it, the recipient's insurance covers everything. And that could even cover your cost for hotel and travel. You just have to apply for that and be accepted. So anyway, there's a link that they have been sharing on social media and with their friends and family, hoping that someone else might want to step up and go through the testing process for him. And that alone helps me to appreciate what I did, because I was the first person to step up and be willing to go through this process for him. No one else had done it yet. No one else had actually said, let's do this. Like, yeah, I'm willing and let's get it scheduled. And me doing that led to me not being a candidate, but it also led to him going through the testing and finding out that he is a candidate for living liver donation. And that alone is something great, because now we know it's a possibility. Before we didn't. He has a complicated anatomy, so we didn't even know if he was a candidate for living liver donation. And this process with me going through it allowed him to go through it, and now we know. So now the possibility is there, and other people can come forward and hopefully find a match so that he can receive this life-saving donation, and the donor can live knowing that they have provided something that is priceless. There's so much to appreciate on both sides of that. And even though I don't get to have that, and I wanted to have that experience, and I wanted to be that for him and his family, I still am appreciating that I helped to get the ball rolling. I helped to get the process in motion. And in addition to that, I reconnected with a member of my family that I had lost touch with. So I had to tell him that it's not going to be me. And I did offer to help in any other way I can. I said, if you need help with your kids, if your wife wants to go through the process and find out if she's a match and you both end up doing that, they both would be laid up. I said, I will come, I will help with your kids, whatever you need. I want this for you. I want this for your family. And I wish it could have been me, but it isn't. And he was grateful. And then I had to call my stepmom and I had to tell her the same thing. And she said that she kind of thought that this might be the case, but that she has an intuition that somebody is going to come forward or that he is going to get a liver in one form or another. So I'm kind of putting my hope in Mother's intuition on that. So there you have it. I'm not going to be donating my liver. I am not going to be recovering from liver donation surgery. And I know that in the other episode, I had mentioned that this process was going to affect the future of this podcast. And that is no longer the case as of right now. I do have some other things that are going on, which may also contribute to a change with the podcast. And if that happens, I'll let you know. But as of right now, it's business as usual. And we'll just see how things unfold in the future. I do have some irons in the fire that may take some of my time away from the podcast, but we'll see. It's all kind of up in the air right now. I really was just waiting to see what was happening with this process. I had been really heavily focused on the liver donation and kind of throwing everything else up in the air and not knowing how it was going to land. So I just want to finish by saying that even though this process didn't pan out the way I had intended, it has been really rewarding regardless. And seriously, if you are open to it, even if it's not for my stepbrother specifically, but if you feel it in your heart that organ donation is something that lines up with your life path, I hope you'll listen to that, because it is magnificent. And I realize that not everybody has this desire to donate a part of their body. But if you do, I think you should listen to that and follow through and see where it takes you. If you're enjoying the podcast, you can show your support by leaving a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. You also can follow Dr. Williams' podcast on all social media platforms and subscribe on YouTube and by going to www.drwilliamspodcast.com. Deliberate creation is the key to living life satisfied, and that is my wish for all of you.